Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News. It is Monday, August 18th. Late in the day. Sorry about that, 5 p.m., but we had a lot going on today. And we're going to talk about some other shenanigans going on in Mexico, which once again shows that the Mexicans are far from fair players when it benefits them or at least some of their political elites. And this is what we call, or is going to be called, the Mexican Interoceanic Corridor of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, or CIIT. All right. Didn't think we'd get those words out, but we did. And it's their answer to the Panama Canal. And it's actually a little bit more than that as we look into what's going on there if we can get through this. How about that? Okay, here's a little bit about the history because those of you may not know that this exists. The map of it is on the thumbnail, so you can get an idea where we are talking about in the world. And the isthmus is a narrow part of Mexico between the Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico, or America, depending who you're talking to, and has been a natural trade route for centuries. Long before the Europeans, indigenous groups carried goods across it. In the 19th century, U.S. expansionists even considered digging a canal there before Panama won out. So now you know. So fast forward to 2019, Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, for those of you who remember him, revived the old dream, calling it the CIIT. He framed it as a way to bring prosperity to southern Mexico. And there were a lot of people in the background who were pushing for it, and we'll talk about that in a second. By late 2023, the first trains were running. The ports of Salina Cruz were expanding, and control of the project was handed over to the Mexican Navy. The project is known as CMAR. Not that it matters because it stands for Spanish words, which we will not pronounce here today. CMAR. So the money behind the project is pretty fascinating and revealing. First of all, people are like, why the Mexican Navy? Well, the Mexican Navy and the Mexican Marines were considered, up until I guess this, to be the least corrupted organization in Mexico. If you ever see a lot of the drug busts, it's the Mexican Marine Corps. So this is a part of the Navy by inference that they would also be not as shady, but it is what it is. So the Mexican government is theoretically the backbone investor, but they brought in a bunch of other people. There are over 50 companies that have signed letters of intent pledging over $4.5 billion. Almost all of them, except for 3M and DHL, and there's Taiwanese firm Foxconn and Pegatron. Good name, right? Uh, Everything else is communist Chinese. Oh, and Amazon. Everything else is communist Chinese. So there's 50 some communist Chinese companies that are going to be setting up what we call maquiladoras in this area and benefit from the train routes from one port to the other. And the part that's raising eyebrows is exactly what I said. It's the Chinese interest in it. So for years, Chinese firms have been eyeing Mexico as a way to exploit USMCA trade access. They do a lot of things to avoid tariffs and things of that nature by putting them in countries that they figure are not going to be involved in the tariff. If you recall when Donald Trump put the tariffs out originally, and there were all these little countries, and people were like, what are we going to do with the Seychelles, or why are we doing it with them? It's because China specifically would go to these other countries, even Vietnam, it does it with, and will move stuff into Vietnam, tag it Vietnamese, and ship it out so as to avoid the tariff. So they're always doing their thing. If they're not trying to scam, they don't know what to do with themselves. So for years they wanted to get in on this. Now, as we know, the Chinese are big players in Mexican politics, the drug market, the money laundering, the drug market, and the money laundering. All right. So they were able to get their friends in the drug market and the money laundering to talk to some people over at the president of Mexico's office. and have gotten themselves in the door with these companies. Okay. So you're seeing once again a situation where the cartels are going to have a hand in each one of those companies, I would not doubt. So it more legitimizes them and it allows them places to launder their cash, which is fine. And they're going on about their business being the big bad wolf of the Western Hemisphere. Okay. So while that's going on, they're even going to put together, they think, $1 billion Chinese steel plant in Salina Cruz, not the person, the place. Analysts now warn the corridor could become a pipeline for Chinese goods, which are repackaged in Mexico, which is what we know. And of course, that'll have to happen is we'll just stop dealing with Mexico 9 times out of 10 because what they also do is they've allowed enticements to try to bring more United States companies back down to Mexico. Devil may care as far as the tariffs and things because money is money, all right, which would further stymie our industrial growth or regrowth, which is what the Chinese need. The Chinese at this point need us to not be able to follow through on President Trump's policies of remanufacturing and restructuring and things like that in the United States because the United States is manufacturing again. You don't need China. And you don't even need China right now, which is the funniest part of it, right? So this whole thing could turn into a big money laundering and goods laundering operation for the Chinese. There are development banks like the IDB and CAF, which are also helping. They're also offering financing guarantees to make the projects less risky. Well, of course, the project's going to have to be less risky because we need to set up money laundering and goods laundering, right? And you can't have somebody in there effing that up until it gets running. So this is where it gets even more interesting. The corridor isn't just logistics, it's a tool for shaping populations and politics. So all these factories and things that are going to go in there, all that stuff. You say, well, there's thousands of new jobs that are going to be coming into the area, right? Well, that's a perfect time because America's kicking the Mexicans out of California and Texas and everywhere else. This will work out really well. They can go there and work in the factories. Most maquiladoras are not full-fledged manufacturing. You're putting this together with that, and that way we can say we made the thing in your country, assembled in your country. Okay. So we're saying, all right, this is going to be good. This will work out for everybody. Maybe they'll knock this shit off. President Scheinbaum, on the other hand, is still, honestly, we should have declared war on Mexico because she definitely declared war on us, is doing her radio broadcast to the people up in California and everywhere else, Viva la Raza, telling them not to leave the country and to stay there and fight with Los Americanos, which they want to fight. There's guys that's ready to fight them, right? She doesn't want them down there either because the majority of the people that we are discussing that are in the United States working hard every day, blah, 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 are not the best people. And the Mexicans don't want them back either. And secondly, the Mexicans don't want them screwing up this brand new manufacturing bonanza because most of the jobs that are going to go into these facilities are going to be handled by Chinese. That's how China works. So if they're going to build 51 factories, they're going to fill it with 51 batches of Chinese workers. If they're going to build 51 factories, the majority of the people that are going to run the show there are going to be Chinese workers. The Mexicans will be there to step and fetch, but they are not there to do anything super useful. And then, of course, some of them will go onto the shop floor and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, Mexico taking its people back from the United States has no figure in the calculus, let's say, of this whole project. Mexico has once again dumped its trash into the next door neighbor's yard and is going to try to not rehabilitate, but bring about a new group of development of the Mexicans that they have available and then have it mixed with this gigantic amount of Chinese because China always is offshoring its people to slow down the revolution which is coming to China. All right. Crazy as it sounds, this is done in a lot of places. Look at how they did it in Africa. So the government, um, so that's really the big explosive bit of this. Okay. So AMLO has made it clear this corridor won't rely on returning Mexican migrants, which was I just told you. Okay. They're going to build an organic force inside of Mexico. They're not talking so much about the Chinese. We know the Chinese are coming. The government is concentrating investment in what they call development poles for well-being. These hubs will funnel jobs, tax incentives, and infrastructure into selected areas. Combine that with CMAR, which is the Navy's military control over the ports and rail lines, and the corridor becomes a mechanism for managing where labor goes, how investment flows, and who benefits. So for Beijing, this fits perfectly. Okay. This fits perfectly into how they like to handle things. And I mean, it's just, damn, they're just real good at it. That's all I can say. So they're going to use the infrastructure that they're going to pay for to control the trade flow and to expand their influence in the country. They will also thereby, with this new multi-billion dollar construction and manufacturing facilities that span across the country of Mexico, be able to launder more cartel money, which allows them to sell more drugs, buy more drugs from the Chinese, sell more drugs into America, take the profits, put it back into the infrastructure. Scheinbaum looks like a hero because there's infrastructure being done. The United States is being flooded with drugs, which we don't need, flooded with continuing, they're already here, but we have to deal with them. All these illegals from south of the border, which have been told pretty much there's no reason for you to come back because we have no jobs for you. So, what would be their incentive to go back? Their incentive is to stay and fight till the bitter end. Okay. That's the incentive they have. So, it is a lose lose situation for the United States. It is a win win for the bureaucrats of Mexico, and it is a win win for the Chinese. So you say, well, once again, we're getting it in the ass. So what's that all about? So what does that mean for us? First of all, the Interoceanic Corridor itself. It could rival the Panama Canal. You're diverting cargo and letting Chinese linked firms sneak exports into our market. Second, the stalled but still looming Nicaraguan canal project, which is sort of just flailing around right now, which is backed by the Chinese. They don't have the money, I think, to continue it. Even if it never gets finished, the symbolism is there. That was them, challenging us in the hemisphere. This allows them to get around our retaking of the Panama Canal. We were going to use that more and more just for our own benefit anyway, which is what the U.S. used to use the Panama Canal for, which was all of our ships first and foremost. So China's found itself a way to get around over to there. There are things that if they were deciding to get a little long in the pant leg that we can do to them, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons that the Mexican Navy is there, which is to approve the fortifying of those positions, blah blah blah, have their ships act as pickets, and probably at some point you're going to see them interfering with the U.S. Coast Guard because of the fact that we're going to start to, I believe, ramp up our interdiction on Chinese shipping when it comes to the drugs. The precursors are where we need to be now. Okay, they don't send the completed drug anymore because they have full factories in Mexico and in Venezuela to build them in. Okay, so what's going to have happen in the United States, if they do it or not, is they're going to have to tighten the USMCA rules and enforce rules of origin so Chinese companies can't game the system. That's what we're talking about with the maquiladores. Step two, they're going to have to ramp up surveillance of the ports. This is the United States. Ramp up surveillance of the ports and cargo routes linked to the corridor. They're going to use that to expand Chinese goods including narcotics and the rest of the cartels, into the Caribbean. They've already started. This will allow them to do it on a much larger level. Okay. Step three, give American companies reasons to nearshore closer to home in Tejas and Arizona or countries like Colombia and Costa Rica. Colombia has been a little bit of a question mark because of President Petro, but in general, Colombia is our last big ally in South America. So we have to go with what's going on there. Step four is using U.S. development finance to provide alternatives so Mexico doesn't feel it has to lean on Chinese capital. That seems like, oh, yeah, they'll do that right off the bat, but they're not going to because the Chinese have so much payoff going on into everything that's down there that just saying we'll give you a good bank loan is not going to do shit. Now, when we do decide that we're going to go to war with the cartels in any way, shape, or form, the easy thing to do is start cutting the low-hanging fruit off, which is the civilian side of the cartels. Anyone dealing with them, we should take and make an example out of them. They're going to boo-hoo-hoo and say we had to do it or they'd kill us, but you know what? I don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. The parents of the 40 million people that are dead from the drug industry, let alone the people that they kill in their own country, nobody wants to hear your bullshit, right? So they're going to have to find U.S. development and finance alternatives. What really has to be done, if you want to really say what it is people have to stand behind President Trump's manufacturing renaissance. And within 5 years, we'll be able to put the boots to the Chinese so badly in the production of things, of anything, of all things, that they won't be able to afford to fuck around in these countries anymore. That's the basics of it. That's why people are fighting against the Trump message everywhere in the United States where they've been taking Chinese money, like California, right? They could give a shit about the Mexicans. The Chinese have bought and paid for, what do we think, 100 and some high-ranking California elected officials, right? The Russians don't have anything out there. It's all the Chinese. So they're pushing that agenda. And then, of course, whoever made this stupidly a U.S. versus Mexico immigration issue. But you know what? If you're going to say that about the Republicans should embrace it and say, "You're right. That's us. We are back. We are going to go hard, del guelo," and that's the end of it. Okay? It has to be done at some point. The problem people don't see is it's being pushed to that point. If everybody's pushing the pendulum so far to one direction, when it swings back, you all cry like a bunch of bitches. Just like you see what's occurring now with the gay marriage, right? Didn't have to go that way, guys, but you pushed it too goddamn far. And that's what's going to happen here with these people that are going to support these fake narratives, which are only based on either socialist rhetoric or Chinese money so that they can keep dealing dirty with us. But that's all I got for you on that. It's up to you. Questions, comments, concerns, you can always contact us. We do like to get it. And anything else you have, if there's any particular issues that you've seen that are not being covered to your satisfaction in the media, because there's tons of it, you can always contact us. We do not charge. But we do like to get those kind of questions, and if we can fill out some stuff for you, we'll do it. All right. So that's about all there is. Have a good day, and see you all later on.